So listen, I have done nothing with my hair. I'm not actually wearing a bra right now. I could barely be bothered to clean up my background, but something came in the mail that I'm so excited about that I wanted to sit down and share it with you guys. So my name is Rebecca. Let's talk about makeup. So the thing that came in the mail was this, the Natasha Denona Mini Sculpt palette. This was released last week and I picked it up immediately. I don't think you guys understand how unusual that is for me. It is very rare for me to pick something up on release. Generally speaking, if something piques my interest, I will put it on a wish list and then I will sit on it for a while just to be sure that I really, really do want it. But this one, as soon as I saw the announcement about this one, I knew I had to have it. I don't know if you could really call me like a Natasha Denona fangirl. I definitely own some of her products and I love everything of hers that I own. But I don't actually have any of her midi palettes, like not even one, but I do love her mini palettes. For me, her mini palettes are just the ultimate little travel palettes. It is so easy to take one or two of these little mini palettes and just chuck them in a carry-on and take them with me somewhere. They take up almost no space at all. I love the color stories. I really enjoy the formula. And when I saw this, all I could think of was that is the ultimate companion palette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a little bit of B-roll. I'm going to show you some swatches that I have done of this palette. And then I'm going to do a few looks with this. Basically, I'm going to take you through all of like the iterative steps that I would go through to show you the different ways that I would use a palette like this. I personally love an all matte look. So the first two looks that I'm going to show you are going to be all matte looks. First, I'm going to show you a very, very simple, no makeup, just a little bit of definition to the eyes type of look with this palette. Then I'm going to add a little bit more to make it just a little bit more dramatic. Then the third look, we're going to reach into something else and we're going to add some shimmer, which, like I've said, is I think the way that I'm probably going to use this palette the most. So here's what I know about this palette. I've watched all of Natasha's videos about this palette. These first two shades here are in her brand new Silky matte formula. This is a lighter, silkier, smoother matte formula than her normal creamy matte formula. While I personally love her creamy matte formula and I feel like it is beautiful, I have heard some people say that when they're first getting into makeup, that this particular formula does not feel the most beginner friendly to them because there is so much pigmentation. So I think the Silky matte formula may be a little bit of an answer to that. Something that's a little bit more beginner friendly, something that focuses a little bit more on that blendability than it does simply on impact. So the darker three shades in here are going to be in her classic creamy matte formula that we're all familiar with. Like the name says, it is a very creamy, very pigmented matte formula. Based on the videos that I've seen and the demos that Natasha has shown, I really think she focused very much on the blendability of all of these colors in creating a really smooth gradient. So I'm going to be excited to see what the difference is between these two formulas as I put them on my eyes. So I'm going to be using my reference brushes for this look, despite my earlier resistance to this brand. They are pretty much all I want to use these days. I have noticed that there have been formulas of eyeshadow in my collection that everybody has raved about that I have had difficulty with in the past. And it wasn't until I switched to natural hair brushes that I started to understand the hype of those particular formulas. So if you do have a palette that everybody raves about and you just are struggling with the formula, try a natural hair brush and see if that makes a difference. So I've already primed my eyes with my Sigma eyeshadow primer. I'm going to go in this shade here. Let's get a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. And so I can see what I'm doing. I need a mirror. What am I doing without a mirror? I'm just going to put this through the socket and see if we can build up a little bit of very soft definition. This is definitely, I think, a little bit more soft and sheer than her other mattes are. I am having to build it up a little bit. This requires almost no effort to blend. It is a very light wash on my skin tone. I think if you're more fair than me, you may not have to build it up quite so much. Okay, next I'm going to take the Refer 14 Max, which is a slightly smaller, fluffy brush. And I'm going to go into this shade here in the middle just to deepen that up. So this is one of her normal creamy matte formulas. There we go. We're starting to see a little bit more definition now. Now her creamy mattes, from my experience, build quite well, but I don't think I want to build it any further than that for this first look. I think I'm just going to leave it there. And I'm actually going to go back over with my number 27 that has just the remnants of that first shade on it. And I'm just going to go over everything and soften it up. Then I'm going to take my little 14 mini, which is this little one here. And I'm going to go into that second shade, and I'm just going to run that under the lash line. Now, if you're very fair, I think you could get the same effect just using that first shade. Now I'm going to go in with my 01 mini. I'm going to take that first shade there, the lightest shade, and I'm just going to go ahead and highlight the inner part of the lid and around the tear duct. And then I'm going to add some just under the brow bone as well. I think for me, this would also be this first shade, the palest shade. Just a little bit of a bone color here. I think this would be a good shade for helping clean up the shape of any of your eyeshadows. Every once in a while, I do tend to overshoot a little bit when I'm blending out this outside corner. And I think this would be a good shade to help clean that up a little bit. Last, I think I'm going to go in with the darkest shade here, this black shade, on my little Rephr 03, which is this tiny little pencil brush with kind of a tapered tip. And I'm just going to run that on the outside corner of my upper lash line. Then I'm going to switch to my 13 mini, and I'm going to pick up some of that second deepest shade. In some of the videos that I was watching, this second deepest shade here looked a little bit orange, and I'm happy to see that it is much more neutral. It is not a cool shade, but it is definitely not overly warm. And I'm just going to use this to blend out the black that I just used on my lash line. Now, to be honest, that last little bit was optional. I totally would have been happy with the look without the shadow liner, but I think that actually did a really nice job of just defining the lash line a little bit. So that is pretty much the first look complete. This is absolutely something that I would wear with a minimal makeup on the rest of my face. I think it's really pretty. It was surprisingly easy. It blended together really, really well. I could tell that the Silky matte formula was a little bit less pigmented than her creamy matte formula, but everything was super blendable. So that is look number one. For the next look, I'm going to use this as a base. I'm going to just go ahead and amp this up a little bit by just adding a little bit more depth. So for that, I'm going to go back in with my Rephr 01, and I'm going to pick up this second deepest shade, and I'm going to start layering that into the outer corners. I'm going to pull that up a little bit above my crease on this outside corner just to create a slightly more lifted shape. And I'm just going to pull that color inward. Then I'm going to go back in with my original brush, which is the 27. I'm just going to go over those edges. Look how easy that was. That just almost blended itself. Honestly, a brown smoky eye is one of the more intimidating looks to perform, simply because if that outer edge doesn't blend, you are in trouble. But that was effortless. Okay, we're gonna do that, the same thing on the other side. Just adding a little bit more on the side to deepen it up just a bit more. And then I'm gonna bring that same shade, the second deepest brown, underneath the lower lash line as well. Now, I watched Angela Bright's demo of this, and she said she got 0 fallout, but I actually am getting a tiny bit of fallout. That may be user error, however. Angela is much better technique-wise at doing her shadow than I am. But I'm going to take a clean brush and just sweep that away. As far as fallout goes, that was not too bad at all, and it cleaned up really easily, so no complaints. Now you could stop here. You could stop here. But let me show you my favorite way to do an all matte look. A Sephora and Kohl's coupon. This'll do. I just need something with a sharp edge. I'm going to take, let's see, that same little brush that we used for underneath the lower lash line, and I'm going to go back into that black, and I'm going to do a little bit of a wing situation. Okay, I had to go grab myself a mirror that will stand up on its own, because this is a two-handed technique and I can't hold up the mirror while I do this. So basically I just need something with a straight edge. I've got a little Sephora and Kohl's coupon here. And I'm just going to dip into that black shade and do a little bit of a wing there on the outside. Same thing on the other side. Okay, that's how that looks. Then what I like to do, this is a little bit of an extra step, you could totally stop here, is I like to bring some of that black into the outside corner of the crease and connect it with the wing. I'm just going to fill up that little corner. This is actually a technique that I saw Katie back when she was Luster Lux. Back in like 2014, I saw her do this. And I have loved it ever since. If you didn't want to go in with black, you could absolutely do this with a lighter color. Then I'm going to go back to my Rephr 01 and I'm just going to blend everything together. I'm going to go back to my tiny little 03 in that same black shade, and I'm just going to tuck it right under there. And then I'm going to use whatever's left on this little mini 14 just to blend that out a little bit. Last step, I'm going to go in with this lightest shade here, and I'm going to apply this on the inside half of the lid. Then a clean brush just to soften all of that together. And that's pretty much it. That is my go-to smoky brown all matte eye look. Now, if you didn't want to go in with the black and you wanted to make this just a little bit softer, you could actually, instead of going in with this darkest brown shade through the crease the way I did, you could just step down one and lay this down in the crease and use this dark brown color in place of the black. So you can just omit the black altogether and just step everything down one space on the gradient to get this look, but softer. Okay, and so for the last look, we are gonna use this as a base, and then we're just gonna add some shimmer. Okay, I shopped my little drawer of eyeshadow singles. So I have single shadows, I have pigments, and I have a few liquid shadows, and I pulled two things that I would like to add to this look. The first one is my L'Oreal Infallible eyeshadow in the shade Amber Rush. This is an oldie, but a goodie. It's actually quite old, but it is so pretty, I can't get rid of it. This is the shade here. It's just this beautiful pinky bronze color. So for this, I'm gonna need a little bit more of a flat brush. This is just a little one from Morphe. I'm gonna spray it just so I don't ruin the rest of my makeup because it is semi-loose. I'm just gonna paint it on the inside half of my lid. Gosh, that eyeshadow is so pretty. Do you see that shimmer? I'm gonna swatch this for you. Do you see that? Oh my goodness, so pretty. Now that would be fine. That would be perfectly fine just as is. But while I was digging around in that same drawer, I saw my Stila Cloud. And so I'm gonna just stick that in the inside corner. I don't reach for this enough, but it is so stinking pretty. Just gonna use the same brush blend that out around the tear duct. I'm gonna add a little bit of mascara and we will have a final look. Okay, I am back. I added a couple of coats of my little Benefit FanFest mascara, which I have been loving lately. I tidied up my eyebrows and then I did a lip using my MAC Laissez Faire lipstick and my Give Me Glow lip liner in the shade Wicked. This is the final look. What I would like to do before giving you my final thoughts on this palette is doing a few quick little comparisons between the shades in the mini Sculpt palette and the other Natasha Denona shadows that I have in my collection. Now I don't have any of her midi palettes, so I can't do any of those comparisons. I think we might find some in the Glam Face palette, but all I have for that is an Alter Ego dupe. So, and I don't know exactly how close those shadows are. But I do have both of the face palettes, and I also have 3 more of the minis that are all kind of in the neutral realm. So let's see if we can find anything comparable. I think the closest thing that I'm going to find that's comparable to this shade here, this bone color on the end, is going to be the middle shade here from the mini Rose palette. So let's see how close those two are. This is from the mini Sculpt. Let me layer that a little bit so you can see it better. Just a very neutral bone shade. And I think this one from the mini Rose is just a little bit more pink. Okay, so about the same value, although you can tell this pink here from the mini Rose is her creamy matte formula, and I think you can tell it is more pigmented than the Silky Matte from the mini Sculpt. A little bit more pink, more of a true bone color here, but those are the closest matches that I have in my collection. Next, I'm going to take this second shade here and see if we can find anything similar. So here's that second shade in the mini Sculpt. I think I'm going to compare that against this middle shade here in mini Starlet. So this is the middle shade of the mini Starlet. A bit deeper and definitely peachier than this shade here. And then this is the transition shade from the Glam Face palette. Okay. Definitely a deeper shade than either of those, and a little rosier. So mini Sculpt, mini Rose, mini Sculpt, mini Starlet, and Glam Face palette. Now that one is looking like it might be a little closer to that third shade in the mini Sculpt. So let's swatch that next and see how comparable the two of them are. So in depth wise, they're a little bit more similar, these two. But this one is definitely more neutral. This one is a little bit lighter and still has that rosiness there. Let's actually look at that one next to this shade here in the mini Biba. So this is the middle shade in the mini Sculpt. Yeah, a lot more of a red undertone in the mini Biba shade. I'm going to actually grab this one on the end from the mini Starlet. That's actually pretty similar, the two of these. That's a lot closer of a match than we've gotten so far. But this one still has a little bit more rosiness, while this one is definitely more neutral. I really don't think there's anything I can pull from the Love Face palette, but just for kicks, let's try this one here. Okay, definitely a lot more pink than any of these here. Okay, let's see if we can find anything for this second darkest shade in the mini Sculpt. That's that one there. We'll start with the smoke shade here from the Glam Face palette. Similar, a little bit more neutral, but actually pretty similar. This one is a little bit cooler. Then I kind of want to try both of these. This is from the mini Biba. So there's this one and then this cream formula on this end. So cream formula first. Yeah. And then on the other side, that did not swatch super well, and I'm not sure why. Okay, so these ones are from the Mini Biba. And then let's try this one from the Mini Rose. So this is the only brown in the Mini Rose palette. That's not actually terribly far off there, these two. I feel like this one is cooler than this one from the Sculpt palette. And then this last shadow, I don't have anything like it in any of my Natasha Denona palettes. That's definitely more of a charcoal than a true black, but those are my comparisons. Interestingly enough, I feel like most of her other mattes, at least the ones that I have in my collection, are a lot rosier and more cool than the ones in the Mini Sculpt. The Mini Sculpt definitely looks much more neutral next to all of the other shadows that I've swatched. Overall, I am quite pleased with this palette. I really like how this look turned out. I liked how all of the previous iterations turned out as well. It is incredibly versatile. I love the ability to basically use any eyeshadow placement or technique and just dial the intensity up or down depending on what I'm looking for. You could also definitely pair a shimmer with either of the two lighter looks that I did. This is just really, really very practical, handy little palette. Now the question is, do I own these shades in any other palettes? Listen, of course I do. Of course I do. If you remember, earlier this year, I actually purchased the Blend Bunny Forget Me Not palette, which I'm pretty sure has everything that this palette has. Although I do feel like the shadows in the Blend Bunny palette definitely lean more toward the cool side, where these are more true neutrals. So the look would be a little bit different using the Blend Bunny palette, but the Blend Bunny palette is enormous. There is just no way on earth that I'm gonna stick that in my bag and travel with it. It's not gonna happen. I also do find this formulation just superior. It is a beautiful, beautiful formulation. Now, do I love the new formula, the Silky Matte formula? I do think it's a beautiful formula. I think it's a useful formula. I think for me personally, I think I would have just preferred that these were her Creamy Matte formula because I don't have a ton of trouble blending the Creamy Matte formula. And these two shades aren't gonna be super vibrant against my particular skin tone anyway. So I think I could have done with a little bit more pigment and sacrificed a little bit of that extra blendability that I think this formula has. I think that was the aim of this formula here. That said, not everybody is me. And if you are much more fair than I am, and if you have struggled with blending Natasha Denona's mattes in the past, or if it's something you don't feel super confident with, I could see you loving this formula. It is honestly probably one of the most blendable matte formulas that I have ever experienced. And I think that if you struggle with that, or if you are a beginner at makeup, I think that is going to make it so much easier. If these dark shadows, especially these two on the end, are something that typically would scare you a little bit because of that worry about blendability and whether or not you're going to get any sharp edges, blending it out with either one of these two or having one of these two layered underneath is going to make your life so much easier. I think Natasha did a fabulous job with this palette, and I am so pleased to have it in my collection. For me and my preferences and my collection and the way I like to use my makeup, this is absolutely money well spent. I hope that was helpful in some way if you're trying to make up your mind about this palette. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!